Hey everybody, welcome to this week's podcast. No special announcements or anything, so let's jump in and see what we got this week. Lon Seidman just released a review and a full live stream showing off Fixel's internal FC1 ODE for the 3DO. So to back up real quick, developer Fixel has created two ODEs, optical drive emulators, for the 3DO home consoles. The first one is designed only for the FZ1 models, and that's the one that Lon showed off. The live stream, which is linked below, has the full installation, which is a plug-and-play installation. You still have to unbolt and rebolt stuff, but there's no soldering involved. It's not crazy like some of the other ODEs that have been released out there. And that's, I would strongly recommend watching the live stream if you're going to be installing one of these yourself, just because it's always great to see somebody else do it so you're familiar with it before you've even got it in your own hands. However, the main video is kind of a summary of all of that, as well as an overview of the ODE, as well as a comparison of the original disc versus this. And I vaguely remember Fixel talking at one point about how the 3DO, unlike the PlayStation 1, is not limited by the speed of the bus, it's limited by the speed of the CD-ROM drive. So switching to an ODE, you're not just gaining the speed difference from waiting for the disc to spin and waiting for the laser to move. You could also potentially then just hit the max bus speed of the 3DO, which would be higher than the original CD-ROM drive. And in Lon's test, it really showed that. It showed a lot faster than the original. So I'm definitely excited to try it out. If you're looking for the internal version, definitely check out Lon's video, or if you're just a curious nerd like me. However, I will be testing the export version, and that's the second ODE Fixel designed that will work with any standalone 3DO console. That just plugs directly into the back port and should work the same. So as soon as those start shipping, which I believe should be sort of soon, I'm going to do basically exactly what Lon did. At the very least, in a full live stream showing the step-by-step process and some loading times and stuff like that. And hopefully I'd have time to do more fancy review as well. Time is even more limited lately than usual, but I would love to do that because I love promoting awesome products like this. So thanks very much to Lon, thanks to Fixel, and I'll keep everybody updated when the new one comes in. If you're a fan of the Sega Saturn, this next section is definitely for you. The Shiro Media Group has just launched a new bi-weekly podcast called Editor's Corner that they're doing in addition to all of the other awesome work that they already do. And this is really focused on like a nostalgia-based, fun, lighthearted, unscripted thing that basically just talks about their experience with Sega consoles in the 90s, and they're aiming it for it to be just totally positive. You know, everything they liked about it, all their happy memories, and things that other Saturn or Sega fans would probably be really into. So if you're a fan of that stuff, definitely check it out. I'm obviously a giant fan of the whole Shiro crew, so I'll definitely be tuning in and trying to listen to as many of those as I can. So Saturn fans, you got more cool content coming your way. This week's podcast is once again brought to you by JLCPCB, and this week I want to highlight a service of theirs that I haven't really shown too much before, their 3D printing services. Starting us out is pretty much the same as all JLCPCB orders. First, log into your free account and then hit Order Now. Then, instead of hitting the PCB or Stencil tab, click on 3D Printing and then add your 3D printed files. What we're going to make today is a case for the original RetroTink 2X that Greg from Laser Bear released to the public a long time ago that you could upgrade the original case to. Now, once you see all of these parts loaded, double check that you have everything you need. So we have the top and bottom, but we also need to make multiple buttons, and I believe there's 2 buttons on that, so you want to make sure that you select the correct quantities. You also have to add a product description to all of these, which I'm still not really sure why they ask you to do that, but you kind of just have to click whatever you want and add whatever thing that you want to add it to. I don't think it really matters, so I'm just going to call it a game controller or something just to get it to work through. Then you're going to want to select whatever 3D technologies and colors that you want. So you have different types of colors. You could even have it printed in metal, ABS plastic, whatever that you would like. Obviously, it would all affect cost and quantities and stuff like that, but it's good that you have choices of whatever materials that you would like. Then select and make sure that your quantities all match. So let's say we're going to make 2 of each of these, and then that means we need 4 buttons. And then that's pretty much it. Make sure everything's matched, make sure all of your options are there, and then just go in to save it to your cart, Then go into secure checkout in order to pay for it, and then just select whatever shipping method you prefer. There's different options here for you with different price ranges as well. You could see it all changing over here on the side. So if you're not really in a rush, you could just do Global Direct, or even cheaper and get standard Global Direct. However, if this is something for a project that you need right away, you could select all of the much faster options that could get it there within a much more quicker period of time. So that's pretty much it. Then you would just hit continue and check out. And same as pretty much all the other orders from JLCPCB, but this one gets you 3D printed designs. The Dreamcast VM2 project is now officially on Indiegogo, and at the time of recording, there's still 26 days left, and they're already 71% up to their goals. So this is looking good that this project's going to be funded. But for anybody that wants more information about this, a while back, Pat, I think back in May, did a post about it. Now Alex did a follow-up with now that the Indiegogo campaign is officially launched. So I'll kind of go over some of the announced specs of it, and I think Dreamcast fans are going to be pretty psyched. Basically, it's a replacement VMU unit using more modern technologies and methods. The number one thing I think most of us might appreciate is it's got a LiPo battery that could be charged either from the Dreamcast controller or through a micro USB cable. So no more buying a giant box of 2032s and somehow losing your saves anyway on that one. It also has storage that's equal to a retail VMU, but it could be expanded by just adding a micro SD card up to 32 gigabytes in size. I'm wondering why they chose 32 gigabytes. It could just be a fat 32 limit, but I don't think it would be filling that much more up anyway. Also, there's a PC utility that can manage save files and even stream the VM2's LCD output over USB, which is kind of neat. And it also has 4 times the resolution of the original, so the original display will be scaled up to it. But supposedly the Dreamcast had support for higher resolution VMU units that were never released, so maybe Homebrew could somehow take advantage of that. I think that would be really cool. So basically, if you are a Dreamcast fan and you're just tired of old beat-up VMUs or batteries dying all the time, this is definitely a project that you're going to want to look into. Check out Alex's post for more info, and of course the Indiegogo campaign as well. I did pre-order a couple just because I was super curious, to be honest. I wanted to see how they perform. So hopefully everything will go through right. It'll get funded and it'll get delivered to us on time, but I'm excited for this. It looks like a cool project, and it looks like kind of what the VM2 unit should have been. I know that would have made it probably way ahead of its time, but I think this is kind of the vision, in my opinion at least. This is probably the vision that Sega had for what the VMU should have been. So if you're interested, if you're a Dreamcast fan, definitely check out the Indiegogo and see if you'd like to support and buy a couple. A few weeks ago, Tito from Macho Nacho Productions released a video about a new method of retrobrighting that utilizes vapor, not putting any of the liquid or goop directly onto the plastics. And I thought it was pretty interesting. We're all running behind after the expo, which is why the post didn't come out till now, so I'm sure most of you have probably seen it already, but here's the basic overview. You build yourself something out of a sealed plastic bin, use gloves and a mask, of course, because you never want this stuff to get on you or breathe it in, but then you basically use a certain type of hydrogen peroxide that's sitting in the case but not on any of the plastics. Then you line your plastics up on the inside, leave it in sunlight, and then depending on how far you want to go, you could even leave it overnight because obviously the sun isn't going to be there, but the vapors are still there. And supposedly it is a safer way of doing any of the Retrobright process. From my very, very little knowledge of chemistry and how these plastics work, because I did work for a company where we made all-in-one medical grade computers, including plastic design long before 3D printers were a thing. So I definitely remember having a lot of meetings. And in fact, I even asked a couple times, how do we get these plastics to not yellow like my old video game consoles did? So I did have enough knowledge to not sound like a moron when I'm talking about this. But what I would really love to do someday is talk to a scientist, especially a plastics expert scientist. Maybe somebody who used to work for one of these companies making the plastic injection themselves, who's got a degree could speak to it. Because as far as I know, the only time anybody ever claimed to be a scientist in the retro gaming world was the person who told everybody to leave your plastics out in direct sunlight in the summer, which is the dumbest thing I could have. I tried very hard back when that came out to be so diplomatic and polite, and people still lost their minds about it. So I'm just going to come out and say it. That's really stupid. Don't do that. Don't do that for anything that you care about, because all it's going to do is break down the molecular structure of the plastics by just heating up and having all of those rays directly on it. Unless, of course, it's something designed to be outside, but not your game consoles. So if you want to try a safe method, this is definitely the one I would probably start with now. Now, I always exercise so much caution when talking about retrobrighting, but I have used it, and I do use it. I used it for like a overhead light thing in my bathroom. It worked great. I used it on camera once for the front controller ports while adding the Retro Gamer Store cases. Everybody made fun of me that it wouldn't work, only being outside for an hour, and it worked awesome. And because it was only outside for a short period of time, the plastic to this day still feels perfect. It doesn't look as white as brand new, but it's definitely not as yellowed as it was. So it's one of these things where I like it, but I think there's so much misinformation out there, especially from some certain big channels. So to see Tito go about doing it and try to do it the right way was really cool. I really appreciate the effort that he puts into this. And if you wanted to try retrobrighting right now, this is what I would suggest. That said, I would try anything else first. So is there a Retro Gamer Store case available for it? Look into purchasing one of those, or for Muramasa. I'm thinking a Retro Gamer Store because of the PC Engine, but Muramasa, there's so many different good companies. The Trogtech N64 case, there's good people making good replacement shells for your consoles. Maybe that one would be a better choice for you. And then take those yellowed older ones and possibly pass it off to people who do good artwork. I'm friends with Russ Lyman, who's been on the podcast before, and he does beautiful paint jobs, and I love it when he takes a beat-ass old yellowed kind of cracked thing and paints it and makes it nice, because there was no other choice for that console other than to fall apart. Now it looks beautiful. So, or, hey, maybe you've always wanted your console painted and it's all yellowed and cracked. If you retrobright it wrong, it's basically going to be destroyed. So maybe have it painted. So I don't know. I would just always think about the big picture. What's worse, leaving it yellowed or having it look nice and bright and then a year from now having it fall apart? That's kind of the caution that I would always exercise for this stuff. And this is coming from a bit of experience with it as well. However, if you wanted to do it now, check out Tito's video, because I think this is going to be the safest way to do it. And I think just based on how this stuff works, you're probably going to be able to get the safest results. It might not come out the brightest, but you won't end up accidentally ruining your console a year later. And, I know I talk too much about this stuff, and I'm probably rambling now, but the hardest thing to describe to people is anything that doesn't have instant consequences. So, like, if you take this can of spray paint and you spray this console, that console is now painted. You know immediately the results of your actions. But with stuff like Retrobright, you can leave it to bake too much and just destroy it, or it could look great. And you think, look how awesome this is, and 6 months later it starts to crack and fall apart. So it's one of the rare moments where I don't mind my rambling. I'm not as embarrassed about it, because I think it's more important to drive the point home than it is to risk annoying people. Ship to Shore has just opened pre-orders on a Breath of Fire 3 vinyl soundtrack. This is the PlayStation soundtrack being released on vinyl. The price is about $40 with a schedule release by the end of this year, and it features artwork by T-Bone and Allegix, as well as linear notes by Nadia Oxford. So if you're into vinyl, at least check out Crystal's post and see if this is for you. I've been really kind of getting into a lot of these soundtracks, and I definitely have a new appreciation for the whole thing. The soundtrack, if you like the music, you like the music. That's kind of the easiest part. But when a good vinyl transfer is done and you get that analog warmth, that's very cool. But when anything extra is put in, the artwork's awesome. Something that comes in it. Like, I've been on the RetroRGB What's in the Box stuff I've been doing on Instagram for a while. I put all of the data disc stuff that came through, including a few that I also got for myself, And like Outrun had different inserts that you could put in so that you could have the background be different colors, just like the different levels. Of course, Space Harrier had that amazing lenticular 3D version that I finally got. That's just gorgeous. And Afterburner's just got badass F-14 Tomcat on there, so that alone sold me. But while this is shipped ashore, I don't mean to talk about competition here, but I've never owned one of theirs. All I could say is that when it comes to any of these soundtrack releases, I love the extra little touches that are put into making it very good, and I think I finally get it now why people are so into these, because the music's cool, but if done right, everything else about it is equally as awesome as well. Pre-orders are now open for a USB to PC Engine controller adapter from ControllerAdapter.com, which is run by Robert Dale Smith, the developer who's made a bunch of different controller adapters that we've covered here before on RetroRGB. And there's definitely a few notable things to discuss. So it is, of course, for using USB controllers on a PC Engine, but it'll support standard or 6-button modes, which is very cool because I've never even seen a PC Engine 6-button controller in person before. It also will work with mice and keyboards. So your HID compliant mice will work as a PC Engine mouse, something else I've never seen in person, and your HID keyboard could be mapped to PC Engine controller buttons, which is pretty cool. It's got an integrated multi-tap, so just using a USB hub, you should be able to connect multiple controllers and not need the original PC Engine, or I guess TurboGrafx-16 hub for it. It's firmware updatable. And also, it's compatible with a bunch of controllers that a lot of people have been pretty happy with. Everything from the 8BitDo stuff to PS1 Classic USB to PS4 controller. So this thing is awesome for both PC Engine and TurboGrafx users. All you would need if you had a TurboGrafx-16 is a basic controller pigtail adapter. I don't think ControllerAdapter.com sells them, but they're all over the place. So if you're interested in using different types of controllers with your PC Engine or TurboGrafx, I would definitely check this out. Now, this is compatible with wireless adapters, but this is not a wireless adapter. This is just USB. So some people like both, some people only like one or the other. I just wanted to make that clear. However, you can use like the 8BitDo PC Engine 2.4 gig wireless controllers with it. So you could make it a wireless adapter, but this is really just focused on the USB protocol, which I like. I still prefer a wired controller in many situations, but that's for many other reasons that aren't really performance related. So definitely check this one out if you're interested. I know people have been talking about this for a while. I think this is one of the few good things to come out of Twitter. So thanks, Robert, for all the awesome designs, and can't wait to see what they come up with next. Here's some very cool news for retro PC fans. The disk burning software Alcohol 120% just released a retro edition that allows full-featured CD burning and imaging to Windows 90X, so 9X, 95, 98, whatever, and XP. So that's awesome if you have classic computers and you're just looking to have the full experience on it. And this is a piece of software that I've been using forever, and I didn't realize that Martin from Retro Game Restore is the programmer of this. In fact, Ronnie told me about it when we were in the car on the way to the airport, and I meant to mention it to Martin, and then this came out, and we just ended up having a conversation about it anyway. So that is really, really cool. I didn't realize Martin has been in the scene for quite a while doing a lot of this extra stuff. So it is also 100% free, so you could just download this and start using it right now. The link to all of the different editions are right in the post by Reese. I wanted Reese to write it. Thank you again for doing that, because I like to, while obviously I have quite a bit of experience with retro PCs, a lot of the stuff was when they were just modern. So while I've been building and rebuilding these things since late 80s, early 90s probably, then this is really Reese is really more in tune with it. So I always really appreciate when any of the other writers step up with their level of expertise. So this is just cool as hell. If you have a machine with Windows 95, Windows 98 or XP, and you want a reliable CD burning software for free, this is definitely it. Last week, Tito from Macho Nacho Productions released a video about a GameCube dev kit that I had no idea existed until I saw the video. This is a dev kit that replaces the top cover and the CD-ROM module with a cartridge slot. And no, it doesn't accept NES or N64 cartridges or anything like that. And in fact, it's mostly just a pass-through, but it was designed so that developers could put games, up to 4 I believe, on their own cartridge-based device, which would make it much easier for them to test different builds and revisions. Otherwise, they would have had to have just continuously burned stacks and stacks of disks, which is obviously a huge waste, especially for a developer that's probably compiling and putting out multiple builds a day. So it was a pretty neat device. Unfortunately, Tito didn't have one of the actual game cartridges available, but I still loved the video. I loved seeing it inside and kind of just checking out kind of a familiar yet unfamiliar piece of video game history. So I strongly recommend checking out the video, as well as some of the stuff from Forest of Illusion, where they've posted pictures of the different dev carts and stuff like that. Tito has it all pretty nicely tied together in the post as well as the video, so definitely give that a watch. Now it's time for this week's Mr. Updates, care of Lou from Lou's Retro Source. As usual, I'm going to just skim through everything that I see here, but if anything piques your interest, please check out Lou's video, and of course the post right here if that's how you prefer to get the content. Starting us out, there was a project that Lou mentioned a while back, TTY to RGB Matrix by Hellbent, and now that screen is wireless. So a very quick overview, it's basically an LCD matrix screen that allows you to display whatever is being displayed or whatever is being run on the MiSTer on the screen. So if you load up the PlayStation Core, the PlayStation logo comes up. I'm pretty sure arcade marquees and stuff like that could happen as well. And now they're looking to make the screen wireless via Wi-Fi. So all you'd have to do is just keep it plugged in. I love stuff like this. I can't wait till I get some time to work a little bit more on the arcade machines I have sitting here, and I would love to be able to have, instead of the marquee, some kind of LCD screen like that. So I'm going to be watching all of these projects, and I only know about them because of Lou, so thanks, dude. Next, Darren O has gotten Akari Warriors 3 working. It's still some sprite issues, but you could try it out if you click on any of the GitHub stuff. Robert did another update for PlayStation accuracy and another great post on Patreon as well, talking about different stuff, but basically he's just continuing to make the PlayStation Core even more accurate, and go back and find things like how Spyro 3 doesn't quite work right because of ways that the game was written to be manipulated on original consoles, so now that's even more accurate and working. Also, when the Cosmo Police Gavalian I can't pronounce anything. When that releases, it's been stated that it'll also have the ability to play UFO Robo-Donger, which is a shooter released in 1986. The Neo Geo Pocket Core has had a bunch more attention because of another developer that was able to join the team. I talked about that last week. So that's definitely a pretty cool thing, because anybody who hasn't experienced that, it's a pretty neat platform. I wouldn't say it's the best, I was about to say mobile platform, the best handheld platform, but it's pretty cool and worth checking out. Also, Furtek gave a few updates regarding the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles core. They realized that everything could be stored inside the DE10 Nano's BRAM, which means that it would have less dependence on any of the external SD-RAM modules. Jimmy Stones is also getting back to working on the Sega Gremlin core and has sampled sounds for Carnival, Invinco, and Pulsar. And Hotego also released Karate Champ to Patreon subscribers, which is an early fighting game with a dual joystick control. I vaguely remember seeing one, but I don't think I've ever played it. Also, Wicker Waka's IREM M72 core also supports their M84 hardware, so now you're able to play R-Type 2, which is pretty cool. Those games are really hard, but I still enjoy them. Jason A has released an arcade game, a core for the arcade game Inferno. It was previously available as a test core, but now it's just part of the official build updates. And there's also a ton of updates, miscellaneous updates for the PCXT core, the Pokemon Mini core, the Rising, and the SNES. So you could check out the individual links if you're looking for more info on all of that stuff as well. So, as always, thanks very much to Lou for keeping this all together, keeping us all updated in one place, and please subscribe to Lou's channel. The second and final part of the Retro World Expo podcast roundup is now live, and there's interviews with a whole bunch of very awesome people, and I think that was the first time I got Dustin in front of the camera for something RetroRGB related. I can't remember because he's been on so many of the work group chat messages when we were trying to fix some crazy problems. So I think that was the first time he's talked publicly, but a bunch of really awesome people. And unfortunately, the audio did kind of start to fall off in this one because the lav mics died, and I had to rely on, processing in the room echoey mic. But I think I did a decent enough job. I don't think it's going to be ear piercing. I think it's just not going to be as good as as the podcast goes on and the mics start to die. I think the audio is going to go down, but not awful. It's not gonna, you're not gonna hurt your ears. But this was such a blast. Once again, thank you to everybody that I was able to chat with. I'm really sorry to everybody that I missed, and there's not enough hours in the day, and I wish I got to hang out with everybody. But this was very cool. I hope everybody enjoyed it. I really hope that my goal was at least sort of achieved, where you sort of felt like you were there at the expo with us, just sliding up a chair, hanging out at the table with us, and feeling like you were there as part of the conversation. And if I didn't accomplish that, let me know what I could do in the future to make that better, because so many awesome people out there in the retro gaming world, and I want all of you to know them as well. Consoles for You just released a new product that converts VGA and component video, including mixing in digital or analog audio, to HDMI. This is a basic analog to digital converter, so there's no scaling, there's no deinterlacing, there's no converting of region. What you put in is what you get out. It just digitizes it. However, the good side of that means there's zero chance for lag because the image isn't being processed at all. I double-checked it myself, of course, because I'm me and I have to, but zero lag analog to digital converter. And this is based off of ManCloud's open source project, but I think a bunch of people contributed to this. I know somebody else did the case design. I believe the original circuit, the first time I saw it was on Electron Shepherd. I'm not sure where the original circuit came from. So this is just kind of one of those cool projects that a bunch of people worked on. It's open source. However, as much as I love all open source projects, it's nice when you could actually just buy them. And that's not a dig to people who do open source. That is, however, a compliment to Jan from Consoles for You, who saw the need for something like this and stepped up to the plate and had them manufactured. The price is $70 plus shipping, but you really got to think about if this is for you or not. And I'll explain a little bit about why you might want this over one of the cheap ones. So, first of all, one of the things that I always say when using those cheap converters that I always talk about and use on my Amazon store is you're buying them because they're cheap and available. I've never claimed they were the best. They're totally fine, most of them. And as with everything that's made in bulk like that from, generic rebranders, you never know if you're going to get the same thing twice. So, while they're cheap, and I still recommend them, you have to test them immediately, and if they don't work right, return it, which is one of the many reasons why I like Amazon. But if you're just looking for a basic VGA to HDMI converter, you, with all respect to everybody involved in this project, you might be better off just buying one of the $20 ones. I have it all linked right here. It's the typical link, retrorgb.link/cheap DAC. Might be totally fine. But let's say you need a VGA to HDMI and a component to HDMI, and you want the option to integrate either analog or digital audio. That's 3 different devices. That's about the same cost as this anyway, and it's better. Now, on top of that, I've also gotten plenty of messages from people over the years like, hey, I don't have time to buy the stuff off Amazon, test it, and cross my fingers. Can I just buy an expensive one and hope that it works? Well, I wouldn't call this expensive, but that's the other reason why you would want this. You just want to buy something that you know is reliable and it works. So I'll go over a mini review of it. I've had one for a little while. Basically, you can connect VGA and component video sources both at the same time safely because there's a switch built in that allows you to toggle between them. And you could also connect both analog and digital audio at the same time, and there's a switch to toggle between those as well. And you could even use a Y cable to connect 2 analog audio sources together. That's always safe. Steve and I proved that in the video a while back. It's not like Y cables with video. That's still a big no-no in almost all scenarios, but basically you could have two of your sources completely connected to this at the same time and just toggle between them with the switch, or if you're combining audio, just make sure to only power one on at a time, and it will output HDMI. It's powered by USB-C. It requires 300 millivolts, and I ended up using a 2.5 amp charger I had, or 2.1 amp, I think it says, charger that I had lying around. And it's one of those things where it's probably safe to try powering it from your USB port or your TV, but maybe expect it to require some kind of actual power adapter itself. I tested 240p, 480i, and 480p. All of them passed through perfectly. I double and triple checked with a time sleuth. All of them are zero lag. And the quality is definitely something else that is worth talking about. So here is a generic converter, and I'm using Outrun for PS2 in 480p mode, and it looks fine. There's nothing really wrong with this, but if we slide over to the comparison shot where we're looking at the analog to HDMI, it's definitely better. It's sharper, it's cleaner, it's brighter, you get more detail. So I didn't test a gazillion images on it, I only tested a couple, but it definitely seemed like a step up. I have everything embedded right in the post as well. So if you really are just looking for a better converter and you don't need a scaler, then this is probably for you. Also, if you're just connecting your original Xbox or your Wii or something that's mostly 480p to your flat panel, you're going to want to use something like this anyway. And I go over this in Myth-Busting Display Lag, a video I did a while back. But there's, on almost every scenario I've seen, there's always more lag coming through your analog inputs of your flat panel TV than there is the HDMI. And I know that sounds weird, but if you don't believe me, check out the video. So this is definitely one of those things where, when would you want this? So, you could obviously pick up a RetroTink 5X and you can get an HD15 to SCART for the VGA. And you could scale it any way you'd like. You could have all those options, but that's definitely a different price bracket. So on the flip side, what if you just have an original Xbox or you just have a Wii? It might be easier and cheaper just to get those direct dongles that are available and just plug it right into the console and do it that way. Once again, no disrespect to the team here, but what if you have both an Xbox and a Wii, and then maybe you have a GameCube with some component cables as well, or maybe you have something else that you want to add to it? Now this device becomes definitely something to think about, because one device for multiple uses, and I especially love the integrating digital audio onto the HDMI line as well. So that was basically like my short overview mini review of this. I think it's a cool device. I'm really glad we got it, but the only downside, the only negative thing I have to say is we need the opposite. We need HDMI to analog as well. We need a really good way to just go from digital video to analog video. Basically I want the same exact thing. Multiple sources plugged in at the same time, better quality than the generic stuff. No scaling, just converting. You can deal with scaling after the fact. I think that's also an important thing. So, to the amazing team that put this together, hey, ManCloud, got any ideas? Maybe we could have something next year that's the opposite. But honestly, I really liked this a lot. Please check out the post. And if you are looking to purchase one, it's just retrorgb.link/analog to HDMI, and that's the number 2, not TO. Before I go, I have a very quick explanation of a live stream I did the other day. A team of people created a clone Famicom from scratch. So everything, a brand new motherboard, a new case for it, and everything about it's brand new except the CPU is not included. The PPU is FPGA based, which I think helps allow it to output the way it does. But you have to get your own CPU for it and plug that in, and that's basically it. Now you have a working Famicom. It's currently out of stock, and I made this live stream unlisted anyway because I think that it's not going to reflect the next version of the product that comes out. But overall, I thought it was really cool. I liked it a lot. I liked the design. I thought it was very reminiscent of the original, but a cool newer design on the case. So you know exactly what it is when you look at it, but it is kind of a more modern thing. It outputs video through either the VGA port or the Saturn mini DIN. and it has an expansion slot connector on the side. It's powered by USB-C, and it has 2 NES controller ports in the front. So what I liked about it, I mean, whenever you're talking about a reproduction of original console, it's sometimes hard to talk about the likes, because if it works like the original, you could basically just say that. Whereas pointing out any of the negative stuff or stuff that could be improved upon, that's always the focus. And I don't want this to sound negative, because it's not. I loved it. I thought it was very cool. But there were a few things to note. First of all, the VGA output always outputted TTL level sync, even in 15 kilohertz mode. So if you're going to SCART devices, just use an HD15 to SCART, and you're good to go. It's got a separate audio jack there for 3.5 millimeter audio, so that would be easy. If you flip one of the dip switches, it doubles it to 31 kilohertz and has a scan line option. And that, I strongly think, is designed for people with VGA monitors. So that way you flip it to 31 kilohertz, you flip on your scan lines, and your VGA monitor, with the brightness turned up a little bit, looks pretty darn close to a RGB monitor, like a PVM or something. The Saturn Mini DIN out had the sync line missing, so I wasn't able to test just the basic RGB out. That should be a very easy fix in future revisions. However, it also offered composite and S-video using standard Saturn cables, which I thought was very cool. So you can do a little wire bodge if you want to solder to it yourself to get C-Sync out of it. There's a few other methods that you could use, but hopefully the next one hopefully the next one will have the DIN set up basically exactly like a Saturn, so you could just plug and play whatever cables you have. It had choice for multiple color palettes, which was pretty cool. And the only real issues that I found with it were that the audio wasn't great. It needed different filtering. The Famicom expansion audio didn't work right. So that's kind of something that definitely needs improvement. But I think there's a ton of room for improvement in this. The only other thing a ton of room for improvement in a good way. Like, it's an awesome product. It's a very good product, and it could be made awesome, without too much work. But the only other thing that I would suggest with it is, instead of the VGA output, to take the PPU's digital output, because it's an FPGA-based PPU, and convert that to even just basic 480p HDMI. You could have everything set so the phase is correctly set. You have everything exactly the way you need it. To convert that to VGA is like a $10 adapter, whereas to convert that VGA output to HDMI, now you have all of the problems that you would always have with analog to digital conversion. Is the phase set right? Do you have one of those analog to HDMI adapters I just talked about, or one of the $8 ones? And it's just always easier to go from digital to analog with video in that setup. Or it's certainly cheaper, at least, too, to get a higher quality version of it. So that's my only suggestion, is maybe they could try an HDMI version of it and have the same thing, HDMI out and Sega Saturn Mini DIN, so that way you could, if you wanted to, have 480p coming out of the HDMI and 240p coming out of the Mini DIN. I think that would kind of bring it up to more modern standards, and of course use MD4A to get the audio up to the same standard of an original Famicom. But Retro Castle was selling these. They're not anymore because they're working on a new revision, so that's why I didn't want to turn this into a real review and a post, because this is not going to be representative of the next rev that comes out. But hopefully they'll take, they're always great to work with, so hopefully they'll take our feedback and just kind of update the audio, think about the video output options, and the Mini DIN fix is super easy. That won't cost them anything. They could just add that to the board design. So hopefully we'll see that coming up soon. But thanks to Fenris Wolf Retro for letting me borrow that. I'm probably going to do another test or two and send it back. And I'm certainly interested to see the next rev and what cool things they could do with that as well. Well, that's it for this time. As always, thanks to everybody who watches, listens, plays nicely in the comments, and especially thank you to anybody who supports in any way, including just spreading the word. The only way I'm still able to keep this going is because all of you. So anybody that even supports for free by clicking on the Amazon and eBay affiliate links and telling their friends, hey, there's a Patreon if you like to support this work and want to see it continue, any little bit helps. So thank you all. Continue to spread the word, and I'm going to continue to try to work my butt off to get as much cool stuff out to you as possible. So thanks very much, and I'll see you next week.